What's going on, everybody? This is Jerome Moore, host and creator of Deep Dish Conversations. And firstly, I want to say thank you for all love and support, and thank you for exploring the perspectives of social change with me on this platform. I want to encourage you all to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube and on your favorite podcast listen platform. And make sure you give us a 5-star rating if you're loving the Deep Dish Conversations. I appreciate all of the support again. I hope you all enjoy this episode. Judge Coleman, how you doing?
I'm fine, Jerome. Good to be with you again.
Congratulations,
Thank you.
Running unopposed, so that's an automatic victory for Division 10 General Sessions. How you feel?
Well, I feel somewhat relieved that I don't have to campaign as vigorously as I would have, but I intend to stay involved and engage and to, be at function where people can converse with me about various things. So I plan to be out there, and I'm very blessed and thankful that I don't have an opponent. So I'm grateful, but
Right.
I know I have work to do.
Another 8 years. Well,
Yeah.
for you, I guess it wasn't a full 8
Exactly.
the first time. So
The
this
first
is your
time.
first full 8 years.
Right. It
So,
would be.
Yeah, it would be. Let's talk about that a little bit. How you ended up as a General Sessions court judge in that
Okay.
process.
Okay. Well, what happened is there was a vacancy in the General Sessions Court. Judge resigned, and the council appointed. And at the time, I was sitting on the city council. I, along with 7 other people, filed an application, and I was fortunate that they appointed me.
What I know you had told me before that you always wanted to be an attorney. You always wanted to
Right.
get in the law. Where did that come from?
Well, early on, my uncle went to Southern Law School. He didn't graduate, and he used to always come over to the house and talk to us about the law, and I thought that was something I wanted to do. And from early on, from I guess knee high up, I always said I wanted to be an attorney. Didn't
Right.
know all the work involved, so I kept saying it long enough, and I guess it became a part of my natural habitat.
Did you, as you got older, or when you put that out there, did anybody around you, mom, dad, your uncle, kind of explain to you the relationship between black folks and the criminal legal system when you started to show interest in that sector?
Right. Well, not really, because I don't think they knew enough about it. I mean, obviously they were feeling some hurt in those days when they were going through the voting process, but they didn't know enough about the law, the system to describe to me the difference between how African Americans may be treated as opposed to others.
Right.
They knew something wasn't right, but
Right.
they didn't know that that what was going on would turn into a position where someone that's an African American would hold a position such as judge and correct some of the wrongs.
Right. What was growing up in your adolescence, youth? What was your thoughts about like law and stuff? What was your experience with?
To be honest, the closest thing beside my uncle was Perry Mason, which I still like.
Right.
And see Perry Mason and know generally how that kind of stuff go cross-examination and showing in court. And,
Right.
as time went on, got more experience about it. But the one thing I always thought about the law, it was a position where you could help people. And that's what I thought I could really do is help.
Right.
So I was interested in that. And I tell you, I think the law is interesting. And
Right.
the more I went along, the more I knew I wanted to be one.
Right. But you also growing up, you was a star athlete, at the same time, play football, quarterback at TSU.
Right.
But you also, you always knew, hey, I could do both. I wanted to do both.
Right.
If you had an opportunity to go to the NFL, do you believe you still had opportunities or the interest to still be an attorney or even be judge?
Well, it's kind of hard to say, Jerome, because I tell you, how things played out for me. I had a few tryouts with the NFL, but because they didn't work out, I came back home and I got into graduate school. And had I been still pursuing the athletic trail, I'm not so sure if I would have gone to graduate school. And then in graduate school, I took the LSAP a few times and got a considerable amount of improvement from the last time, and it was good enough to be accepted. However, I just don't know how I could have been as successful by going the NFL route because
Right.
it takes you in such a way, and then with injuries being what they are,
Right.
any day you could be injured for the rest of the season.
Right.
So I'll say that I think the NFL is a good workplace to be involved in, but I also think being a judge or being a lawyer is even better for me and people I can help.
What type of law did you practice as an attorney?
I had a general, I was a general practitioner.
Okay.
So I took a variety of cases. There were some cases that I wasn't interested in, like domestic, like divorce, things of that nature. I was never interested in that kind of law, but I was interested in criminal law. I was interested in constitutional law, contracts, things like that. So those are some areas that I worked in. I can't say I mastered any of
Right.
it because as a sole practitioner, you're just trying to keep the doors open and keep all the bills paid.
What was some of your biggest barriers? Because, I think a lot of the general public and like TV and stuff, you see these lawyers, they got all these or attorneys, right? They got fancy suits and stuff. We just automatically assume, okay, lawyers, attorneys. As soon as you pass the bar, like it's paycheck, it's payday, right? And so, but that's not always the case for everybody, right? Because
No.
you all are entrepreneurs. Essentially, you got to build up your client base. So, what were some of those barriers just starting off?
Well, first of all, after you graduate, you have to pass the bar, which is not in and of itself an easy task, but you really have to study to pass the bar. And once you pass the bar, you join the rest of this world out here with many attorneys, and a lot of them are not working. A lot of them are taking jobs to supplement their income with families. So you recognize that. So the competition is great for the people that you wish to solicit, because if you don't practice all kind of law, you got to take the law that come to your particular area. I wouldn't take a bankruptcy case because I don't do bankruptcy law.
Right.
So I had to take the limited amount of cases I could in the area, because in that area you had to be efficient. You could make a mistake and really damage some people with their property, with will.
Right.
So you really have to be on top of it, know the law. And
Right.
so when you're starting out, you have to make sure that you stay within your zone, because you could really get burned by trying to, practice on subjects that you're not proficient in.
Is it during those days when you was practicing? What was your biggest lesson that you learned?
One of the biggest lessons I learned: never leave money on the table. And what it is I had an offer for my client, and my client didn't want to accept it. And we went to court on it. We got nothing. And somebody told me after, they said, "That's your biggest mistake right there. Never leave money on the table."
And so when you're going through that, you have to, you're doing a lot of times in practicing that type of law. You're doing what your client wants you, kind of, hey, I want to go this route, right?
Right.
Regardless of, hey, I think you maybe should want, I want to go this route, right?
Yeah, right.
What is that dynamic like? Because you win is if you win is you get the credit. If you lose, you get the credit.
Yeah, you get the credit both ways. Well, sometimes it all starts in the evaluation of a case. When a client walk into your office, you sit down and properly evaluate it. Then you design a budget to tell that person how much they're going to actually have for filing fees, depositions, prepare interrogatories, because some of these things are done by other people in the office and specialists. And to do deposition, they're quite expensive. If you take a doctor's deposition, generally they start, when I used to practice, at $750 an hour. So you take a deposition for 5 hours or 4 hours, man, that's a lot of change. So one of the things you have to do as a young lawyer is make a good evaluation on what kind of case this is and whether or not I can afford to take it.
Right.
Because there are some cases you can't afford to take it even if you don't get a quick payoff.
Right.
When I say a quick payoff, I mean if it doesn't drag on too long, you can afford to kind of wait around until things come together. And then there are some that will go on for a very long time, and you just can't afford to wait around. You got to pay staff, there's
Right.
equipment, a lot of things.
Right. Is there any cases that you made a decision as an attorney that you regret? Like, man, if I could go back and if I can go back and do some, if I can go back and just do that over, I would do it.
Yeah. Well, I think in Robertson County at one time, I think I was arguing to a jury, and I think in it I became too emotional because I was involved with the case. And now looking back at it, I think maybe if I would have just been a little bit more detached. We didn't necessarily lose big, but we didn't get what we should have.
Right.
And I just think that I cared so much about it and wanted to win.
Right.
I didn't do the very best I
Right.
could have done. And I learned from that too.
Now, have you ever received any from clients after a case didn't go their way? Have you ever received any threats, any kind of felt any way like, oh, this person may want to do something to me afterwards, or just made threats that they didn't go through with, or just said just derogatory, mean, angry things because, again, it's all your fault.
Right. Well, I've been pretty lucky to that extent because I haven't had a client to come back to me in a way that displayed that kind of emotion. However, some are disappointed when you don't win or you don't get what they thought you were going to get, particularly in accident cases, because so many things depend on it. So, I have not had a bad experience with a client. I have to say that. Now, I didn't win all my cases, but I won a good many of them.
Right.
But I think one of the things, I start off on the right basis. I help people to understand that it can always go a different way. Even though we have plans and we think our case will be better served going this direction, there's a side out there that's waiting to tear that up.
Right.
And so sometimes things don't go the way you want to.
Now you're judge, right?
Yes.
Completely different than being an attorney, right? As an attorney, what made you feel and know that you was confident and ready enough to be a judge, a general sessions judge here in Nashville?
Well, you continue to learn and grow, and even though I've had a chance to be there going on 5 years now, I still don't know everything. So I learn daily about the job, what to do. I think the most important thing is remain fair, competent, study, get to know where certain pieces of work so you can rely on them, and that's done through research and having staff to do it. But it's a continual learning process, and I don't know if there's a judge that will tell you, look, I know all there is to know, and I haven't made a mistake, because it's a daily practice.
Right.
It really is. So I think it's your attitude towards people that count. And most people have said that they've noticed that I have a pretty, meek attitude, and get along with people well. And I think that's key.
That's some of the good things people say.
That's some of the good things, right?
What are some of the bad things that you've heard that people have said? Judge Coleman, man, he does this or he does that, because there's narratives out there, right? And they come back to you.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound holier than thou on this, but all of the comments that we have heard or been brought to my attention have been positive. Now, there are some people that have come up and said, well, I think you could do this better, or, I didn't quite understand why you did what you did. And I said, well, maybe I didn't explain it as good as I should have.
Right.
And then I'll try and take the time to do it there. I don't see any mistakes that I've made that's really caused a problem in clients wanting to file complaints, because it's too easy for them. Not only do they tell you and tell others that you've made a mistake, they go to the Judicial Board of Conduct, to the Ethics Bureau, and they'll register their complaints with them. Then you have to file a response, and if they think it's bad enough, they'll call you in and interview you about it.
Now, as a judge, you must remain impartial
Right.
in all cases. Um, what does that mean
Well,
for
what that
people?
means
Yeah,
to me
what does that mean to
is
you?
even though a situation may be one that will cause you to be emotional, or you may in some way share some of the pain and frustration of some of the clients. For instance, if you had somebody who had bought a car from a used car dealership, and you know good and well that they were buying the car with the intent of having a good car, but now it's broken and they want their money back, and they're claiming that you said this was a good car, and they're telling it was sold as is. It's those kind of things that trouble me, because there's not a whole lot you can do. They did buy it as is, but that person, unbeknownst to them, was buying something that
Right.
wouldn't work, and
Right.
all their money's gone, and now they're having to start over. So those are kind of decisions that will bother you, but for the most part, I try to be thorough in my analysis and get it right the first time, because you could really put somebody behind the eight ball if you're not.
What is your definition or meaning or thoughts of justice?
Well, I think justice is that goal that we in the law and we as citizens try to achieve. Uh, what is justice? And the question is, what's justice to some may not be justice to others.
Right.
You've seen a lot of cases where people have gotten off on certain crimes that they allegedly committed, and people say, well, there's just no justice here. But look at it from the other side. If the state can't prove the case, even though it may look as though this guy is
Right.
guilty of sin, if they can't prove it, justice is you got to let him go. And most people say it's not right. I mean, one of the biggest, O.J. Simpson.
Mm-hmm.
O.J. will go to his grave with people always thinking that he had something to do with what happened
Right.
in California with his family, right? But justice was served to me in that they couldn't prove that he did.
Right.
But we all thought so based on what we heard, what we saw,
Right.
and what the media, showed us.
Right.
It was a situation where you say nobody couldn't have done it but him. But justice was served because they didn't find him guilty.
Right. What is, do you think, one of the biggest obstacles to get justice in our
I
system?
think you have to keep working at it, because sometimes people think their actions or their conduct or the way they do things is correct. And until they know better and want to change, that'll prevail. For instance, there were some that thought slavery was good. They thought it was good,
Right.
and you can see why.
It was
a cash-
legal, right?
It was legal. It was something that you could, run a business on.
Right.
Cotton gin, and all of that. So, for some people, what was wrong with that?
Right.
But now you look at it and you say, what? You using people as, slaves?
Right.
Involuntary servitude?
Right.
So, justice has to be defined in the vernacular of what you're trying to achieve.
Right. Well, I think you brought up a good pivot point as far as with slavery, right, and putting a price on a body, right.
Right.
A lot of people feel like that's what our cash bail system is.
Uh-huh.
Somebody has an offense,
Uh-huh.
and they get a bail set, and because that person cannot afford that bail amount, they have to remain and sit in jail.
Right.
Maybe could possibly lose a job because of that. Mental health, a lot of things, regardless if it's a night or 30 nights, right? Everybody's different. But I know there's been a lot of talk around reform, cash bail reform. What are your thoughts on cash bail reform here in Nashville?
Well, the bail system is the bail system need work, true enough, but it's really the product of the state legislature, and they're the ones that set the standard by statute on how a bail system should work. Do I think it always work correctly? No, and nothing does. But in some cases, you have to figure that if someone is accused of something and there's a certain amount of evidence, you need that person to return to court so that what you said before, justice can be done. And one way to do it is to make them put up property, money, or something that may be considered good, valid currency, or you don't allow you to do work for your bail anymore. But it's a good system, but I think it's been overused. And what we try to do over there in the General Sessions Court is fit the situation to what a person can afford, and at the same time protect the public.
Right. Now, and that bail amount is usually set by a magistrate.
Right.
Right.
At the outset.
At the outset, right.
Mm-hmm.
And so if me and you have committed an offense, and we have similar criminal records, right? And your bail is $5,000, mine is $10,000, right? Same offense, similar criminal background. How does that magistrate come to that money amount for me versus for you in this hypothetical situation?
Yeah, well, there are guidelines that's provided to us by the statute, and I can't tell you how any of the magistrates that we have working under us would do it. They would have to state that. But I could imagine they use the same formula as we judges. We go to those 9 points in which the statute say you should consider. And one is danger to the community, ability to get back to court, and they go down from there.
Right.
The whole thing about the bail, I think that's frustrating people, is it appears as though those who cannot make bail have to rot in jail. This is what I hear all the time. As opposed to those who can afford it, they can get out, defend themselves, and go on with their life. And nobody should be determined guilty before they have a hearing.
Right.
On the other hand, you have victims out there say, how dare you let this person out when they've ran over my sister, nephew, son, or whatever. But you can't look at it that way. Bail is to ensure a person come back to court, not to determine the guilt or innocent. What our magistrate look at, I'm sure when they consider what amount, is the seriousness of the offense,
Right.
the likelihood of you coming back to court.
Right. As a judge, I want to say judges have a lot of power, right? Yeah, you all have to be very careful how you all use that power for the community, but also the power of your voice, right? You all just can't say certain things, right? Whether it's regarding the open case, even policies and things like that. If you do recognize something that is, could be better in our criminal legal system, how can you use your voice as judge to say, hey, this is what I've seen in my courtroom, and I think maybe we should make some changes here based on what I've seen. How can you and other judges use y'all's power, y'all voice and influence and understanding of seeing people come in every day, right, into the courtroom to make changes around policies and with the state legislator?
Right. Well, things happen over a period of time. It's not, in my opinion, necessarily the best practice to continue to just change because the time have changed, the sake has changed. It needs to be something that's well thought out. Both sides need to be able to weigh in on it. Those who will be, I'm not going to say harmed by it, but those who will participate in the system need to have their views expressed too.
Right.
And also you have victims out there too that will say that, you didn't set bail high enough
Right.
in the bail case. But we as judges have we have the awesome task of deciding people property and money. And we have to go about that in a way that we see fit, because two judges may not see things the exact same way.
Right.
So you have to be fair, and you have to create an atmosphere in which people have confidence in you.
Right.
And use your best judgment with legal training.
Right. We still in a pandemic.
Yeah.
And I've seen some interesting things happen because of the pandemic, as far as in our court system. A lot of things have, like, hey, we don't need to put this person in jail for these things. We got others more serious things that we can deal with. How have you seen the court procedures become more effective due to the pandemic?
Well, and I will say one of the things the pandemic has done that I have noticed is that it allowed people to work from home, wherein before I don't think we was working as much from home. It allowed people to sometimes have their cases taken care of while they're in other places. So to that extent, the pandemic has showed us that we can do things different than the way we used to do them. We've had to take the approach of not allowing a lot of people to come into the building when it was at its height before the vaccination was in place.
Right.
And we had to cut down on the number of people coming in and the number of cases we would take a day. So all of those things that we were forced to do, we find out that maybe we need to continue to change our process and look for ways that we can improve through modern equipment, through virtue. And when it comes to inmates coming over from the jail system, we've been able to go to a system where we could do a virtual hearing without them having to come over. Now they would have to agree to that, because if they want to come over and there are not health reasons, then eventually we have to let them come over. But a lot of them, and a lot of cases, our mental health cases, we could do them by virtue. And that has helped tremendously.
Any other effective ways that something that y'all wasn't doing before or was doing that y'all said, hey, well, we can't do this anymore, but y'all realized, like, hey, we didn't need to do that in the beginning because it's keeping more people out of jail. Is there any of those things that came up?
Well, I think one for a fact, when I think the courts made a decision that they were going to use the jail system at the height of the pandemic for only serious matters. And other matters that weren't as serious, we were going to try to find other ways to deal with it.
Right.
And I think prior to the pandemic, we didn't necessarily think of it that way, even though I think in a lot of cases, and I'm not sure about Nashville, you had jail overcrowdedness.
Right.
Well, the pandemic forced us to take a look at things, and everybody made concessions about how to do it. And I know personally in our court, some cases that we wouldn't necessarily rule where a person had to spend some time in jail, we decided no because of the pandemic.
Right.
So then now we figure that there are some things that we were forced to do that we need to continue to start, keeping those practices around.
Right. One of the practices I feel like is great for the community to partake in is community court watch. Gives people a reason to understand what happens in the courtroom, right? Especially if you're not the one having to appear in court, right?
Right.
Which is what we want, right? You get a chance to observe and see what's going on, get to observe judges, and kind of, understand the process, especially if you're not there, which you shouldn't be, just because, you did something. What are your thoughts on court watch here in Nashville? And have you, what's your relationship with some of those?
I've had a few people come through our court and they describe themselves as court watchers, and I personally don't mind. I've never heard anybody else say they mind. The recording part of it is something that has to be done based on, the court's rule. And, if you're a media and you give the proper notice, it's never going to be a problem. But I think court watching is good because it helps people to gain an insight into the judicial world, and it gains confidence in the system and the people that's conducting the system, such as judges and clerks. So, yeah, I think court watch is a very valuable tool. I'm glad it's around. They always conduct themselves in the appropriate manner when they're in court with us. And I like having them there, to be honest, because, like you said, some people can't get down and they could share their good experience. If you're doing a good job, they'll want to tell that.
Right. If I'm a court watcher and I feel like Judge Coleman just made a decision that I didn't agree with, right? Or don't understand why he made that decision. What is the best way for me as a court watcher to broach you about that in the most professional way that you're gonna receive? You're gonna receive it well and understand that I have good intentions and not just trying to just point all the fingers at you, right? Because I think that matters, right? That matters. Because like you said, we all see justice differently, and so I might be trying to understand how was justice served in that particular case, and I want people to best understand how to approach you, but possibly other judges when they see things that they possibly don't agree with, but want to have a healthy conversation about.
Well, and I can only talk about my experience.
Right.
When people didn't agree with me, sometimes they would write a letter.
Okay.
And a letter is better to me than email, simply because you put forth an effort, and it looked like to me just so much better thought out. But they'll ask the question of why was that decision made? And the thing I don't do is take offense to why somebody may question me. There's some things you can say and some things you can't. Some matters are confidential, and then you can't talk about cases that are pending, and nor can you talk about decisions that might show up in front of you again.
Right.
So it's a balancing act because people don't know all the things there is to know.
Right.
But I think there's a legitimate way of asking, and that is ask the question, why was that decision made?
Right.
Your Honor, how did you come to that conclusion?
Right.
And it's up to the person to answer. Some people may think, well, I'm not going to answer because whatever I say is not going to be sufficient.
Right.
So I'm not going to get into this running gun argument about somebody about a decision I made, because they'll never understand it all. But on the other hand, you have people that will ask you a question, a good question, and I will endeavor to try to answer them.
Okay.
Whether they understand it from my perspective or not. But I do think that the public does deserve some explanation as to what's going on,
Right.
particularly when it's your loved one.
Right. So it's clear to us that you're a black man here in the United States, right? As a black man, and I think also as a judge, what are your thoughts on just the over incarceration of black folks, the disparities that we see in the criminal legal system, and just it seems like just the target that's on our back that seems a little different than other groups of people here in the United States.
Well, I think certainly, the statistics and the data that one could read from would definitely suggest that there have been some issues and appear to be some unfairness. It's hard to say if you're not there and you don't have all the information, but certainly based on the number of, the totality of people going to jail, it seemed like it does give an indication that there's some unfairness there. Although you don't know until you really look at the numbers and get all the information you need.
Right.
But I think there's been a tremendous stride to overcome some of it. There have been some practices put into place. Of course, you always had your appeal, but those things are kind of expensive and time taking. But it's a growing progress that we have to continue to have happen in the racial culture.
How can that be improved, right? As somebody that understands law, somebody that is a judge, how do you convince in this particular situation black folks that it will get better? Because it would seem like by the numbers it hasn't gotten better. Even the more positions and people we have in place, like positions like yours, right? The more black judges we have, the more black political candidates we have. Since 1968, if I remember correctly, incarceration has not lessened for us. So what words of encouragement or things that you can really give black folks to say, just hang on in there, because eventually it has to take a turn, we would think.
Right. Well, I would suggest that some people would say that things have got better. I don't think everybody think that the system is like it was in the 50s.
Right, right.
I'm sure a lot of people see improvement. It's better than it was in the 70s, and it's better than what it was in the 80s. So I say all that to say it's a continual improvement because it's a balancing act.
Right.
And as it relates to African Americans being confined in, detention centers and jails, those studies do indicate that there are a lot compared to the total population, and it would give rise to having one think that it's an unfairness and it's
Right.
injustice. And
Right.
you would think that if the population is swayed in a way where you have more minorities in jail and you have less of them in the country,
Right.
how
Right.
does that work?
How does that sit with you? On just on a personal day to day, having a black son, right?
Right.
Being black yourself and just living life as a black man, but knowing that okay, I'm a judge and I'm trying and I'm trying and aiming and intentional about making sure that I do my best job to be fair, be equitable, be impartial, and and improve the criminal legal system. But I see all these other things happening, right? How does that weigh on you just in your everyday life? And you know, black folks, we hard on each other.
Right,
We
right.
hard on each other.
Uh-huh. Well, I think it's a continual work that has to be in progress because it didn't happen overnight. It's not going to go away overnight.
Right.
But I think tremendous strides have been made, and we just have to continue to make them and educate people and, demonstrate to people that love is better than hate in all
Right.
cases. And if in fact you take the time to understand one another, learn their culture, even I would say if African Americans had some concerns about hatred, they need to bring them forward and let people know so that those who are in authority positions can help them out. But on the other hand, we have to be accountable and be responsible. So my job as a person that's in the court system is to point that out
Right.
and help a person try to get on the right path if they're not.
Going back to what I said, we harder on each other as black folks, right?
Right.
Has your blackness ever been questioned for the simple fact that you are a judge in a criminal legal system that many of us feel are not for us?
Right. Well, it has not been questioned to my face.
Okay.
I'm sure people have probably made comments one way or another, as people would do. But the comments I've gotten is that whether I'm dealing with someone African American minority, that I'm fair and I listen. So my blackness have not been called into question. It may be discussed, and people may not like decisions I made, and think that because I'm an African American, I should have went a different way.
Right.
But I have to say, truthfully, I have not been questioned concerning my blackness. And if you want to know the truth about it, I don't feel any kind of way because I'm black. I know I'm black, but I don't make any decisions in court based on that.
Right, right. We hard on each other.
Oh, yeah.
We hard on each other. And the reason I wanted to pose that question because I've had other guests that are in similar positions, maybe not judges, but similar positions. Say, hey, yeah, because I'm in law enforcement. Black folks, hey, come on, man. Because I think rightfully so. I think rightfully so because historically, what has occurred and what has happened, even currently, I would say, what the numbers say. So I think we have a right for pause and look at the situation. But I also say maybe the more right people that we have in those systems, maybe for the best, and we can maybe help us understand and bring some of that cultural competence to the position that maybe somebody else may not have because they haven't had the same lived experience. They might not prejudge you before you walk in and open your mouth because of the way you look, because their proximity to you has been very close. And I know just because you might have dreads and gold teeth, that don't make you a certain type of person. So I think that is crucial and important.
I do too.
For our legal system.
Yeah, I do too. And You know, one of the things I think we have to do is continue to refine, continue to work at it, and never settle for complacency.
Right.
Um, and help those who lack the understanding.
Right.
Drop off some nuggets and
Right.
just be honest with people, and help them get to a place in life where they can help others. Because that's what it's going to take.
Right.
One hand after another, helping.
How do you drop them nuggets in the community? Because
Sure.
judges can be intimidating. I think
Yeah, I can imagine. I can
to
imagine.
community.
Hmm.
Y'all get the robe on
Right.
and I think there's a perception too that people may have or don't have about judges in a position,
Hmm.
right? And they may
Hmm.
feel like, hey, they up here. I really don't want to, you're a judge. I don't know. But I think, but I think but like you all are, public servants,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I think it's important and crucial for you all to be tapped into community
Hmm.
and listening, but
Hmm.
also being able to just give people opportunity to speak and ask questions. So,
Right.
um, you got 8 more years of this coming up.
Hmm. Hmm.
How have you done that in the past, and how will you continue to do that in the next 8 years?
Well, when I am asked, I attend various forums, either as a participant or as an observer. When I'm asked to participate in something that would not compromise my position in the community, I do that. I get a chance to speak to a lot of you in the summer, particular. And so I try to be an example, not necessarily just verbally, but to to be there for them, to volunteer in the community, things like that. I think that's helpful for them to know that you're a regular person and
Right,
that your position is not the only thing that defines you.
right,
And that's how I consider. I'm often asked, how can I help somebody get started in the practice of law? How can I help someone seek employment? Matter of fact, I was on the phone today. Somebody called. I didn't even know them, but they were just asking, what could I do to help them get employment? And I said, well, the first thing, send me a resume and come up and let's talk. Let me
right,
see where I think some areas we can approach. And when I
right,
say we, both of us together,
right,
because I don't have any jobs to give them. Jobs are numbered, positions are numbered. And generally, there are people in those positions until somebody, leave the job for a variety of reasons, or they create a position. And generally, positions are not created
right.
unless they're, jobs where you make them purposely for some people.
Hmm.
But number of places that need people, um, there's enough work for everybody, and there's enough opportunity for everybody to share.
Going back to here specifically in Nashville, in our criminal legal system here, what do you think are like the biggest areas of growth where growth is needed? Um, and I know I've heard you talk before about like mental health and
Hmm.
homelessness. Would
Hmm.
you say those are the two biggest for you, or
For me, that's
yeah,
not necessarily everybody, but I
right,
do think that the homeless situation put the city at a spot where they need they need to really kind of work at what we can do to help people
mm-hmm,
gather themselves decent homes and houses that they can afford.
right,
Everybody can't afford to live in the same spot. But at the same time, the question has to be, do they want that? Do people want that structure? They want
right,
live in a community where they have to abide by rules, or
right,
do they think that that's not important? So the person themselves got to want it. That's the first thing. Then second, I think we that call ourselves being supportive of this government ought to contribute as much as we can.
mm-hmm,
It's not an easy thing, the homeless situation, and obviously the mental health situation. Not that I'm an expert in mental health because I'm not. I'm
right,
just saying that's one of the issues that I find troubling, and a lot of things happen around that.
right,
And I don't necessarily think, in my opinion, my humble opinion, that the mental ill need to be incarcerated. I think they need to be treated, but not
right,
incarcerated. But you got to first get there. You got to
right,
determine. But I think that Nashville is really a growing place because
right,
we have some good facilities, with the
right.
various schools and university, and I think we're going in the right direction.
Is how's the relationship? between our judges, general sessions judges, and MNPD when it comes to mental health, those who have mental health and those who may be homelessness, and trying to not jail them for those situations.
Well, I don't know. They're two separate areas.
Right.
You got the police department and then you have the judicial system.
Right.
They kind of work hand in hand, but the
Right.
authority is different. And I would think that law enforcement say, I have a job to do, but I can do it with some sensitivity.
Right.
And I think that they do try to do that. However, if someone is violating the law, is it up to an officer to say, because of this condition, I'm going to let you go free?
Right.
Well, I don't think so. I think you bring them in or you
Right.
get them into court, and the court, with its resources and wherewithal, could at least provide opportunities to
Right.
work at the issues.
To your knowledge, is there some type of rapport between the two, like understanding that, hey, okay, we agree that we don't want to incarcerate everybody that might have a mental health issue. Is there a process in place, or something that y'all at least have a rapport about, like, yeah, okay, I know this person did this, they broke a window, but clearly they are schizophrenic, right? And so he or she necessarily doesn't need to, I don't need Judge Coleman to necessarily like convict this person and put him in jail, but they need to be treated.
Right.
Is there like a rapport or some type of understanding or a process on how to do that, or is that something still working?
Yeah, no, I think there is a process in place, and I'm not in charge of it, so I don't want to speak as if I am.
And they do have like a homelessness court.
Right, homeless court, a mental health court, and those situations get referred over there.
Okay.
And I think the judges that operate there do a good job.
Okay. Yeah. A lot of times you would think as community members who not in the criminal, like, legal law, you're like, oh, we judges go hand in hand with police, and maybe they talk every day and things like that, because, like, but that's not always the case. But I think that's good to understand,
Right,
too,
right.
for knowing the capacity of your role, right? And
right.
then you can understand the capacity of a police officer's role,
Right.
So it's not getting confusing. You're not making laws, right?
Right, interpreting the
Yeah,
law.
right. You're interpreting the law, right? And so I think that's something people need to know, because they might put all the blame on you.
Oh yeah. And then if you don't know, until you find out, why not? That's the last person I saw.
Right.
He or she appeared to be making a decision as to whether I am going in this direction or that direction.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it's important.
One of the biggest things too that have been talked about, you're hearing a lot of noise about, is restorative justice, right? What does that mean, or what does that look like on the general sessions level?
Well, from in their concepts around, and I'm not so sure if the definition that I'm going to give you would be the concept, but to me, restorative justice means, if a person had some trouble with the law, and broke the law, how could we work to find ways to repair them, keep their dignity, and help them gain a better quality of life? And you do so by doing it with your policies, your procedures, making some compensation for those who made a mistake for the first time around, who do not have a long record, giving them a chance to do some community work, and more importantly, getting their record to the place where they can still get a good job, go to school, or whatever. In other words, to restore them back to a place in life where the problem that may have occurred years ago, or even at the current time, it could be dealt with, and at the same time drop them off in a good spot in life. And to me, that's what restorative justice means. Justice will be done for the wrong, but at the same time, we want to repair you by giving you a trade, sending you places that will help if you have mental health issues. I think trying to restore you back to a good quality of life and repair some of the wrongs.
Yeah, and what I've learned talking to people like yourself is that also accepting the accountability that I harmed somebody.
Right.
Right?
Right.
You restored me, but for me to be restored, I have to accept that I
Right.
did, hurt or harm someone or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think that's a big piece of it too, that people may not tend to think about or leave off when we talk about the restorative piece. Like, yeah, we should restore, but that means you have to admit
Right.
that harmed somebody, and that because you stole this person's car, that they couldn't go to work and they
Right.
possibly lost their job.
Right.
And you have to come to terms and take accountability for that.
Yeah, you have to own up to,
Right.
whatever it is that you finally admit that didn't go right for you,
Right.
and say, I own this, and,
Which,
and I'm gonna
which put
do
attorneys
better.
that will put attorneys in a precarious spot, because I won't restore the justice for my client, but okay, your client gotta admit
Right,
that he or
right,
she did this.
right. We got to first start off,
Right.
yeah, from a point of, okay, are you taking responsibility for your actions?
Right.
And
Exactly.
then once you do that, then we can start working towards a cure.
Right. 8 years. It's almost a decade. Round off to 10, right? A lot of things can happen in 8 years. A lot of good things, a lot of bad things can happen in 8 years. Looking forward in these next 8 years, you'll be Division 10 General Sessions Judge. What have you learned, right, in your previous term that you can take forward with you going into these next 8 years? And this will be your first complete 8 years.
Right. Well, as I said at the outset, that you continue to grow in a job like this. I don't know if you ever get to the point where you know it all, because new things are come about all the time. New people are coming about, new ways we are doing things. I think for me, just to continue to grow, to be conscious of the job itself and the people you're dealing with, and then try to develop a process that will be fair.
Right.
That is the key, fairness.
Right.
And I think you have to look within inside yourself and understand that what might be fair to you may not be fair to someone else.
Right.
But at the same time, if you're fair, you're constantly learning. Those are the things I think that will help me improve. And I'm the kind of person, I love to learn. I love to learn. I'm not eager about going back getting a doctor's right now, but other than that, I mean, I like to see how other countries, how other states, and other people are doing things. And if there's a better way, I think we should take note of it and see how we can incorporate it in our system. And as I go through my years of training and learning from others, I hope to make our court a fair court, and a court that will rectify problems if there are.
What were some weaknesses maybe that you realized that you had when you first started? When you first was appointed.
Right.
What was some, and then and how did you correct those?
Well, you get a mass of information, and General Sessions Court is different from the trial court.
Right.
They have days to prepare. They get briefs and pleadings, and they're better equipped to handle issues that they have to determine based on their setup. In General Sessions, on a daily basis, you may walk in and be looking at a case for the first time and have to make a serious decision about it. So I think one of the things I try to do is keep an open mind. And when I don't know something, either I ask those who have been around for a while, or ask the experts over in the Supreme Court or work on his staff. But continue to learn and grow, and just don't make your way the only way.
Again, you run it unopposed, so you don't have any competition this go around. But what should people expect from you? What should voters expect from you?
Well, they can expect that they will have a person that care about the city, care about people, someone that promised to continue to learn and grow, someone that will ensure that due process is always placed at the top of the mat. Due process come in a lot of ways. One of the biggest parts of due process is substantial fairness. Yeah, you should bring a person in and make them answer whether it's a civil matter or a criminal matter, but whether or not the system itself is fair,
Right.
whether or not you listen, and in cases where people are not represented by an attorney, try to ensure that you get someone there that's legally trained
Right.
to assist them. So there are a lot of things to be learned. I mean, I learned a lot in the last 4.5 years, but each year I think I get more equipped to deal with the issues.
Right. Nashville is a growing city, you know, and that means probably, you know, our criminal legal system, our courts are probably going to need more resources as the city grows, as more people come here.
Right.
What does that look like in the next 8 years as the city grows? What does more resources look like? What are those resources that enable you to be able to do your job for the city of Nashville the most effective, equitable, and just way?
Well, you know, fortunately, we have some good facilities here. We are in a decent building. A lot of communities you go in, they're in need of more jail space. We just had a new facility built. We have adequate space in our courtroom to do things. I think just a continual improvement in the way we go about doing our jobs in an effective way, and you know, making sure that people understand that we're not in the business of just punishing
Right.
or incarcerating people, but we're in the business of making people's lives better after a mistake has been made or some victimization has gone down.
Right.
So I think those are some key points.
What can community do to ensure that Judge Coleman is trying to make sure, you know, he's healing the city, and it's just not a punishment system, and that he's being just and equitable to everybody? What does accountability look like for you, far as coming from the city and the residents and community members of Nashville?
Yeah, good question. You know, when you're elected, there's a certain amount of trust that's placed into you as a candidate and you as a winner of an election. And people have the chance, if you don't do what you say you're going to do, and if you're not in places where you should be, then they have a chance to change the direction and get someone else. My goal is to ensure that I will continue to work hard. I'll continue to strive to be fair in my dealings, and that, you know, I will place those things that need to be separated in those particular boxes. You can't be mad at everyone because something didn't go right. There are people that had nothing to do with that,
Right.
or if you didn't get your way. So as a result, you know, you don't want to participate in a system that you know can help out.
Right.
But for me, it's just a continued work at the things I know to do, be fair, work real hard, be at work when I'm supposed to be there, and, you know, just continue to uplift those who want to be uplifted. And, you know, on the other hand, if it's people that need to be held accountable, be prepared to do so. Hopefully that won't be as many, but
Right.
if there are, then, you know, as a public official, you have to make the adjustment. It's not for the faint of heart. I can tell you.
Right. Judge Coleman, one last question for you.
Okay.
I'm just curious. What has been your most difficult case?
Let me see. I don't know what's been my most difficult case, but one of the things that really bothers me is when family members are at odds. That bothers me. I don't want anybody to be at odds, but boy, I
Right.
think you've just kind of lost it when you have family members who are at a bitter end. Because if you can't get along or respect your family, look like to me there's going to be little hope with you being able to adjust to our society. I mean, this is it.
Judge Coleman, it was a pleasure having you.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you the last word. Is there anything else that our Nashville community members should know about you, or just about, you know, what we can expect or not expect in the next 8 years that we have you as General Sessions Judge for Division 10?
Well, first of all, I'm appreciative at getting the opportunity to sit as a judge the last 5 years, and I'm just as appreciative or more that I'll get a chance in the coming 8 years. Of course, we still have the primary and the general election to go, and I don't anticipate anything happen, but you never know.
Right.
But I'm more grateful than anything, Jerome, because I had this opportunity. I realized what an awesome task and what an awesome amount of confidence that people have put into me. And it's demonstrated once again by not having to have an opponent in this race. So I am more grateful than anything. And my plans are to work hard, continue to do things that I know to do right, and when they're not, address them in the proper way. I think that you're going to get everything out of me that I have. And one of the things people will always be able to count on from me is that when you look for me, you'll look in a category of those who want to fight for what's right.
Right.
I would not, take one opportunity to run away from my job, my duties, or hide when tough decisions have to be made. I understand that. I understand why people voted for me, and I understand the job at hand. And the thing I can say is that I'll continue to improve, I'll continue to hang in there, and I will be a friend to the community, I'll be a friend to my neighbors, and people can expect that when they come to our court, and I think I'm speaking for all other courts in the General Sessions array of things, they're going to get a fair understanding of how courts are run and how that court run, and that they'll be treated in a fair way. That's what I think people can count on me for.
Judge Coleman, I appreciate your time as always.
Thank you.
Thank you. Until next time.